All righty. So, day one of NASM's BCS certification, aka Sochi's exercise psychology class. I like our name better. It sounds much fancier. Uh, but as we're looking at it, one of the big things that we want to know is that we are acting as like health educators, right? That's really our job, much more so than, like I said, like a therapist, right? So what we're going to be going over in this first PowerPoint, we want to talk about how obviously the amount of wellness professionals has increased. There's a lot more sort of industries out there around like health and wellness. And yet we still see obesity and comorbidities that are associated with unhealthy lifestyles. We still see all those things go up. So like, what's the deal, right? Like, if there's so many people who can like work on this stuff, why is it increasing, right? Why aren't we getting to a place where like the world is healthier? We know more now, right? Like we know so much more than we used to 100 years ago, and yet certain diseases are climbing much more frequently. And I don't mean just like the number of cases, I mean like percentages of population. So what's the deal, so we're going to talk a little bit about like how it's not always about just having access to really healthy foods. It's not always about like having access to healthy lifestyles. Sometimes it's just a lack of awareness. Sometimes people don't realize like that something changed in their life. Some of you guys who were in my last module, you'll remember we talked all about the calorie differences between just starting a new job where you don't take the stairs to work every day. That seems very small, but maybe the job's a little bit more sedentary and you burn, I think we said 50 less calories a day, and mathematically, what does that come out to over the course of like a full year? It was 50 calories times 365. That's going to come out to 18,000 calories over the course of a year. Not really that big a deal. But we divide that by 3,500, which is how many are in a pound of fat. That's 5 pounds gained that year, just by having a new like lifestyle change. So sometimes we just aren't aware of like these small little changes that happen in our life and they have like an effect. So one of the things that we're going to do, well, one of the things that we're going to help our clients do when we're coaching them, we are helping them better understand these changes, right? We're help develop awareness. Or, as we're going to say a lot, you're going to hear me say this all the time. We're going to help to develop conscientiousness, which is way more easier to say as awareness. So employers are starting to realize that like health and wellness is a really big thing to employ for their employees, because obviously an unhealthy lifestyle actually does have sort of a negative impact, not only on like their employees individually, but also like a negative impact on like their entire workforce. We've actually seen and they've tracked this, that healthy employees are about 10 to 12% more productive than people who are like struggling with specific diseases. And that makes sense, less days spent at the doctor's office, less days spent calling in sick because you just don't feel very well, and things like that. So we know there's really a big need. And this, by the way, at the beginning of this, when you guys read these chapters, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. We'll get to that in just a moment. When you guys are reading these chapters, the first chapter is like the same thing that NASM always does in every one of its like first chapters, where it's like, here's why you bought this package. Like, it's like, you did a good thing by getting this. Like, it like totally justifies like the purchase, which is like kind of funny. NASM does that in every textbook, right? Like every book, your main NASM textbook, if you read chapter 1, it's like here's why you're becoming a personal trainer. Like, you're gonna make a lot of money, it's a viable career source. Like it's very funny that they do that. So they're kind of doing that here in these first couple paragraphs. So really quickly, taking a pause, just because I forgot to mention it in our intro, you are going to hear me say like the textbook. Now, this is one of the classes that I refer to as a packet class. And what I mean by that is there actually isn't a direct textbook for this course. It's not like a physical book. You're not going to find this in your Sochi bag. Instead, there are these chapters. They're little PDFs. By the way, there isn't a book for this. It doesn't exist. NASM only has like digital PDF copies of this book. But I will be sending these out every day in your email. You can also find them on Canvas. If you go to Canvas, you will see that it is a downloadable link in day one. So clicking this, come on. My internet is slow, fellas. There we go. So if you go down to day one, you'll see it says chapters 1 and 2, and I click that, and it'll open someday. But here's the PowerPoints. Here are the notes, the PowerPoint notes, and then there's chapter 1 and chapter 2. So you can click these to download them. They're also on the YouTube channel. So I will be attaching them in the emails. But if you go to the YouTube channel and you look at the description, pausing that so I don't hear the last thing we need is 2 of me. We go down to the description down here. You can see there is the link that you can download chapter 1 and chapter 2. So there's a lot of places you're gonna be able to get it. Also, Danny and Cyrus, so I activated the final exam. It's up on Canvas from our last class. So PFT 118, the anatomy physiology final, is up. When you go to Canvas, you will notice that it has been pushed down ever so slightly because I am about to, right now, I'm going to drag the psychology class to the top. So the psychology class, the current class that we're in, is now going to be the topmost class in Canvas. It's just going to move where you find it. You'll see it right there, just ever so slightly above where we would normally see it. I'm sorry, ever so slightly below where we'd normally see it. So you're going to see the final, there's PFT 118 stuff. It'll be like right here. But you will notice that exercise psychology is just above it now. So that's just a little bit of a change. I always move the current class to the top. Okay, sorry. So yeah, so I will be sending out that textbook in a little bit. So like I said, we are going to be health educators, right? And again, this is sort of an example of how we approach like diet and exercise. Now we are 100% experts when it comes to exercise. And if it comes down to like, telling our clients like physiologically, what's the best exercise for them, or, what rep scheme is going to work to help them reach their goals, what exercises they should do, right? That is totally where we come in, and we are experts on that. We can prescribe an exercise program to anybody. But you'll remember when we were talking about diet that I kept saying, like, we are not allowed to prescribe diets to our clients. We are absolutely allowed to help them calculate out how many calories they want to eat. We're allowed to help them come up with a good choice of foods. But we don't necessarily tell them specifically what to eat. We're not prescribing it to them. Right? The same thing is true here in this exercise psychology class. We are absolutely helping assess maybe what kind of stuff is getting in their way in regards to like, achieving their goals. We are absolutely allowed to come up with like a good program that's going to sort of help them. We're allowed to work with them on that. But what we're not allowed to do is apply like therapy, right? That's not our role. We're not going to dive into someone's past and be like, hey, Danny, tell me about your mother. What's your relationship like with, we're not doing that. Like, that is not our role, What is our role is applying what we call guided self-help. right? We can help work with our clients. And if they're like, if I'm like, hey, David, what's a goal? What's something you're working on right now? And if he's like, yeah, I want to get in better shape. Getting in better shape is a decent goal, but there is sort of a little bit of a problem with it. It's not very specific. Like I'm not sure, if somebody told me they want to get in better shape, I'm not sure I know what they mean. I'm not even sure they know what they mean, you know? So what we want to do is say, okay, well, what's your definition of being in better shape? Do you mean like having a low body fat percentage? Do you mean being able to run a mile under 6 minutes? Like, what is that? Be able to dunk a basketball? Like, what does that mean to you? So we need to get a little bit more specific, right? And that's sort of what we mean when we say we're guided self-help. I'm not coming up with a goal for my client. That's not my job. But what I am doing is I'm helping them sort of come to realize that goal might not actually get you very far because it's not helping you in any way. It's not structuring you. It's not pushing you forward in the ways that you want it to. Whereas like the SMART goal system, which is a system that we're gonna go over in depth in this course. The SMART goal system makes your goals very specific. It usually makes them very measurable, and so you can track your progress. It makes them very actionable, so you know what actions specifically to take in order to meet your goal. It makes them very realistic. Sometimes people will make unrealistic goals, and we want to help them with that. And it usually gives them a deadline. By making your goals like timely or time bound, you get a specific deadline. That really helps. I got a whole video to show you guys that I love that's all about deadlines, and it is just a really effective tool that lights up your brain. And so that's a really big part of that. So that's really what we mean when we say we're a health educator, right? It is a specific health educators are specific roles within the health and wellness industry that help our clients plan and program behavior change strategies. So another thing that's very different about us compared with like a therapist, we are really just focused on like the here and now in order to like generate like a more positive future. We really don't dive into people's past. That's not our job. We're not going back in time trying to figure out. Now, I might ask a question like, hey, have you ever been on a diet that you were unhappy with in the past? I might ask a question about their past. Obviously, we need to know our clients, right? But we're not like going way back and like Freudian style, which, we're also going to talk about how I hate Sigmund Freud. Uh, we're not going back and like putting somebody on a couch for 6 hours, asking them to dredge up old memories. That's not our job. That can be very effective for certain, people within the field, but like not our job. So we are, responsible for, implementing and evaluating whether or not our plan is working. That's the other part of our job, right? We put our client, we help our clients work with us to develop like a plan of action. They start doing it. And then as we train them, we're going to continue. Our job is to monitor it, right? We're going to check in and say like, hey, how's the progress going? Are you happy with like how this is working? They're like, you know what, progress is a little slow for me. Or they're like, you know what, I'm having a hard time sticking to the program, right? And it's like, all right, let's reevaluate. That's our job. That's a health educator. That's a coach. So we definitely know that like there are a lot of trends related to like job opportunities when it comes to health educators. You guys might find that like this kind of stuff is like right up your alley. You might love the behavior change stuff. I've had students who like get super into this. I had a client actually get super into this. So you guys will remember, as I'm pretty sure actually everybody on this call right now was in the class where I told this story. I had a client have a heart attack in one of my classes. I was teaching a cardio group exercise class. And this client of mine had a heart attack. And it was crazy. He was he was fine. It was they call it like a guardian angel heart attack because it's like so minor that it's basically your wake up call. And it's like your guardian angel's going like, hey, get it together, like wherein you don't really have any side effects. It's very, very, very minor. But he was like, he was group exercising and he was like, hey, I'm getting some heartburn. And I was like, that's weird. And he was like, yeah, it's every time I speed up. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like you are having cardiac stenosis. All right, let's go ahead and get you off that spin bike. And send him down to the front desk. And they called they actually called an Uber to drive him to urgent care, and they took him to the hospital. In the end, he was fine. He had a very, very, very minor blockage. He didn't even get any necessarily like long-term side effects of this, except for what? He had one long-term side effect, and that was that it really opened his eyes, and he really decided to like take control of his life. Now, and by the way, he was living in New Jersey at the time that this happened. Obviously, he was here in Malibu, but his home was in New Jersey. He decided to get really into like spinning and marathoning. He got really into group exercise, started exercising every day, got in really great shape, moved out here and now lives in Malibu. And he became a life coach. So now he actually, very similar to us, works as a health educator. He's not an expert on exercise or anything like that. He didn't become a trainer, but he did become a life coach. And so now he helps other people, maybe struggling with like losing weight and stuff, to take control of their life. And he's retired, living on the beach now, and I'll say it was easy for him. He was pretty wealthy before this, but like he was able to completely change like his whole lifestyle, and I think that that's really cool. But again, he doesn't dive into people's past. What he does do is he stays focused on the present in order to make a better future, right? That's really what he's aiming for. And that's sort of what we do, right? We coach our clients, we look at their present in order to make a better future. So behavioral therapy, right? When we talk about like becoming a behavior change specialist, is basically translating fitness lessons into actions that we can create as like habits. So our job is to help our clients establish like a healthier lifestyle, and come up with like targets to hit. You are going to hear the term in this class. You're going to hear me say target behavior a lot. A target behavior is basically something that we're trying to get our clients to do. We look at somebody who's like really stressed out. It's like, hey, maybe we need to get like more effective sleep, right? Let's start tracking like what your sleep habits look like, and let's see if we can maybe do some things that are going to help you get to bed earlier. That's a target behavior. So our job is to sort of help establish healthy lifestyle choices, and then methods for how to achieve those lifestyle choices. And this course is a pretty unique class in that every one of our days, you might notice that every day really had like sort of a different theme. Once we get to like Tuesday's lessons, we're going to see a lot of different tools. I like to think of these as like different tool belts for different clients, because you don't have to use all of these. They're just some tools that you're going to have in your tool belt. You know what I mean? So we're going to talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of my favorites. This is behavior change strategies that are mostly focused on thoughts and emotions. So we're helping our clients like avoid negative self-talk. We've also got like social cognitive theory, which is the idea that like, hey, let's talk about how to get a really good group of people around you, build the right team to help you meet your goals. CrossFit has been so effective. I don't love CrossFit. Honestly, like I'm not like a huge fan. I think a lot of people get injured doing CrossFit, but so many people love it and they've had success because they're very good about creating like a culture where everybody lifts each other up and supports each other. And that is a very valuable tool. And for that, I'm jealous of CrossFit. I think CrossFit does a great job of that. What's up, David? Do you have a comment? question?
Yeah, I think so too. I have to agree with you on that. I think I said it before. I think the reason why uh CrossFit gets a lot of slack is because, number one, it makes you look like a goofball for sure. But number two is that it's just like some of the workouts, like you could see it being effective, because some of these guys, they're crazy. Like they do crazy handstands, but then you see them doing like, I don't know, something weird like a lunge, like it's weird. But it's also like the social circle too, I think is a really big aspect because I've seen a lot of like I've been to a CrossFit gym before because
Okay.
my boss moved in there, and
Uh,
like the camaraderie in there, like they call each other by their first names, they're always clowning around, they know each other, they make plans outside of the gym. Like it's a really crazy thing to see,
yeah.
honestly.
The big joke that I always hear is that CrossFit is actually just a cult. But that's the thing, right? Like that's what's effective, when you get people lifting each other up, you're much more likely to have effective results. So we're going to talk about like how to implement some of those strategies. We're going to tap into CrossFit's, superpowers here in social cognitive theory. um, we're so there's a lot of different tools out there, a couple that are not mentioned here in the PowerPoint, but just to go over everything that we're going to be talking about. One of the big ones is going to be visualization. um Phil Knight, he was huge on visualization. That was like his big thing. He was like, look, see yourself doing it so you can actually do it. A lot of coaches are big on visualization. It's one of those things where like they don't allow anybody to have negative self-talk where you say, you're like, oh god, I suck at this. It's like, no, 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 you are great at this. Say it. Say you're great at this. That's kind of an example of visualization. You imagine yourself doing something and then you actually do it. So that's a really fun one. Goal setting, we talked about that earlier. We're going to use SMART goals. We're going to use long-term goals, short-term goals, outcome goals, performance goals. There's a lot of different types of goals out there. And then lastly, behavior therapy. Like I mentioned earlier, that's one of my favorites. Behavior therapy is huge when it comes to really training someone to do something, right? That kind of classical conditioning. So when we look at like the overall stuff now, we are seeing that we've got the trifecta of information. Like obviously we are experts on the fitness side of things, right? Like that's easy for us to understand, and we know a lot about nutrition. We have specific courses on nutrition here at Sochi, but like, as an athlete trainer, you're getting good nutritional information. So we're pairing those two up. But now we're sort of finishing off the trifecta here, in this course. This is where we're getting behavior change, right? Where it's like, you could write the world's greatest program, put your client on the world's greatest diet, but if they don't do it, it doesn't matter, So I've actually said this before, and you guys will remember, you guys have heard me say this. People ask me all the time, like, what's the best diet? What's the best workout program? I get those kind of questions all the time. And the answer is the best diet is the one that works. The best workout program is the one that works. I'm not a big keto guy, but if somebody like lost a bunch of weight and like they're super healthy, their blood profiles are like totally normal, their heart's working better, and they went on a keto diet to do it, great. I'm a big fan, you know. Um, is it good for everybody? Not necessarily, And so that's really the behavior change stuff we're going to see. We are sort of um, finishing off our trifecta here. So, like I said, we are not necessarily in charge of applying therapy. That's really not what we're doing. The big thing I want you guys to keep in mind, if you forget everything I tell you today, you don't hear any of it. It goes, my Zoom connection breaks up. I hope that this is the one thing that everybody hears. Most important part of today's lesson. We are not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists, we're not therapists, right? What we do is we are coaching. And so we are applying what is called guided self-help. We are certainly like knowledgeable about things, but this relies on the professional and the client in order to facilitate change by giving the client the knowledge and the support that they need. right? We are basically a walking Wikipedia of different tools that are good for helping change our habits, right? And that is the guided self-help approach, okay? We really want to leave the ball in their court and allow them to make the choices that are going to be most effective. So if I'm like a really big fan of SMART goals and my client's like, you know what, for me, what works is putting a little note on my bathroom mirror that I see every day. And so they're a visualization person. Great, that's totally fine. Let's teach them a couple more visualization techniques, you know. And somebody else, let's say they're more like, it's like, I just don't know why I'm really struggling like this. And it's like, all right, well, let's figure out why. You know what? Let's do a little bit of journaling. You know, I want you to track, you know, what your workouts look like this week. Not only like how many sets and reps, but tell me how you feel at the end of every set. You know, tell me, you know, like what's going through. Did you feel like this workout was effective? Did you hate it? Like, you tell me what's going on. That'll be a really effective tool because it'll drive some awareness. So we are going to do a little bit, two of the biggest things that we are going to kind of focus on are going to be learning how to effectively screen our clients and how to effectively use what is called the stages of change. So when we're working with our clients to help them adopt these healthy behaviors, we do want to make sure that we are using the right tools in order to do that. And so like when I say the right tools, I mean, we need to be able to recognize which things are going to work with our clients, right? So we stay within our scope of practice, right? We work with healthcare providers. You know, if somebody has like, let's say somebody is struggling with like disordered eating, for instance, it is not our job to like treat that. We don't treat diseases, right? We don't treat conditions, but we are able to recognize these things. And so it's really important to make sure that they speak with their doctor so we can encourage them to have that conversation. But like I said, we're focused on the future, right? We're helping our clients sort of meet their individual goals and stuff. So who knows? You might call yourself a life coach if you have this certification. You might call yourself a behavior modification specialist, a counselor. Sometimes you'll hear that term, health educator. You know, that's sometimes these titles. I've definitely had students. They ended up actually going back to school, so they kind of broke my example. But at first, I had a student graduate from Sochi and then realize they didn't want to be a trainer anymore. They were like, I mean, I do, like, I want to know about exercise. I mean, and they got their NASM certification still, but they decided they wanted to be like a life coach. And so like they got into life coaching and like Instagram coaching and stuff like that. And then they ended up going back to school and actually getting like they applied for a college and went in for actually getting a psychology degree, which is great. But I was like, dang it. Yeah, they cheated on me with another school. No, but yeah, that might be something you find that is your favorite stuff, you know. So it's kind of that classic 8-day class that we have in the Sochi program. You know, it's like the soft skills. Maybe this isn't necessarily your favorite thing, and that's okay too. You know, maybe you want to work with you know, focus primarily on like athletes and stuff. Again, there's a lot of different like little tools that are going to be built into this program. So there are a lot of business development opportunities, you know. This depends on where you want to see yourself. And hey, you can use a lot of what we're talking about in this to help you develop yourself professionally as well. So behavior change strategy is very good for weight loss, really good for athletes, really good for working with kids. That's why this is actually part of the youth mod. We're going into our youth program design class after this. You might find that like nowadays on Zoom calls, friggin' virtual sessions are going gangbusters, you know. This whole Zoom version of the world that we live in now is really opening the doors for a lot of people who want to work in coaching and behavior change. You're not necessarily there to train your client, you're just there to help them stick to a program that you come up with. That's great. You see it all the time, you know, like I get YouTube ads for YouTube trainers who are all about the coaching process, and this is what they're doing. So NASM is going to focus on a behavior change model that's very similar to their OPT model. The OPT model is all about sort of working your way up the steps, right? That's very similar to how we approach our behavior change. One of the things that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about in this course is what's called the stages of change model. And it's basically describing like how people change their habits. So when someone's not thinking about changing their habits, they're in what we call the pre-contemplation stage. They're not really even thinking about like, making any changes. Then we have the contemplation stage, which is like, okay, they're thinking about it. It's like that person who smokes and they're like, yeah, I know I should quit. Like they get it, but they aren't taking any steps to actually do it. That's contemplation. We get preparation. That's somebody who's actually really getting ready to change. They're like, as a smoker, they're like, okay, this is this is what I'm going to do every time I get like a craving, or, this is the nicotine patch that I'm going to go with, that's the preparation stage. They're going to kind of get everything in place. Action is like, they're trying it, they're trying to do it. Maybe they're not perfect, but they're putting the effort in as often as possible. And then maintenance is eventually like somebody who like has made some specific, very big changes in their life. And they're just working on like not falling back into old habits. And then eventually they'll end up in termination, where it's like, man, it's not really at risk anymore, And then the other thing that we're going to use a lot in this course is our multimodal screening. So we're going to look at how what we call our clients' basic id. There's our stages of change. And the basic id is we're looking at how certain behaviors are in our like client, so like how they act in certain situations, maybe how they're affected by things mentally, right? The sensations that they feel physically, imagery that they conjure up. I know that like this about myself, I tend to conjure up pretty intense imagery. Sometimes I get big flashes of things. Cognition, how we think about things. Do you have negative thoughts? Do you have positive thoughts? Our interpersonal relationships. So there's social cognitive theory coming back again. And then a little bit of like the drugs/biology. What I mean by drugs/biology is, I mean, like, physically, how do certain things affect you, like as a biologic person? Some people are slightly more prone to stress than others. So let's take a look at that, or somebody might be taking a medication that has some type of effect on their heart rate or some type of effect on their mood, so we do want to sort of like have a good understanding of that. That is why the next part of what we're talking about on Tuesday is so important. We need to know how to effectively screen our clients and assess them. So that's our first PowerPoint, guys. Any questions on that? Questions, comments, or concerns? How y'all feeling?
Feeling good.
Love that. All righty. Cool. How's the internet been? I haven't gotten any notifications that my internet's being a punk.
No, it's fine. There's probably just a lag, like when we ask you questions, there's probably just a lag, but so far it's not bad. I mean, you cut off a little bit, but it's nothing crazy.
Okay. All right. Well, don't be afraid to like, if you guys, want to like chime in and be like, hey, go back, we didn't hear it. Please feel free to chime in whenever you want, guys. Okay. So let's talk about what it means to be a coach. Obviously coaching is a very integral part of the personal training industry, but really this entire course is all about us developing our coaching skills. So let's define it first, right? Because there's all kinds of like coaching that's going to happen in all kinds of fields out there. Doctors do a little bit of coaching, social workers, teachers, therapists, obviously, alternative therapies. And then there's us, fitness and wellness people, right? We are definitely working as like a coach. We are that person, in our client's corner, trying to help them. So our clients are, one of the great things about coaching that is a little bit different than just, again, being like a therapist is, coaches are actually allowing the client to take a little bit more ownership, a little bit more control over the outcomes in their life, right? So like a coach is again, we are applying that guided self-help. Our clients are the ones doing all the heavy lifting. We're just there to sort of guide their arrow, you know? I always like to retool that phrase. My favorite way to say this is like, you know, they say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know, now that phrase is meant to be describing like a stubborn person, you know, but I like to think of it as like how to be a really good coach. It's like you can pave the road, you can clear it and make sure the road is well lit. You know, you got all these signs that are pointing like go this way. You can do all that for your client, right? You know, and you can kind of like, you know, guide them along that path. But like if you are making them like if you're dunking their head in water to make them like drink, you're not really helping them in any way because they're not developing the tools necessary to do this on their own, you know. And that's really we want to avoid that, right? So we do have a specific scope of practice. There is something that does make us a coach rather than a therapist, right? We're responsible for suggesting solutions without telling them what to do. We're very much responsible for encouraging our client, but we're going to monitor our client and provide as much feedback as possible over time, right? That's our job. We're there to like do all the heavy tracking for them, and that way it's like I had a really hard conversation with my client on Monday, where I was talking about how I was like, she's like, yeah, I just haven't felt that great lately. You know, and I was like, well, you know, have you noticed that when you're not feeling that great? Because like I also we keep a very you know clear track of like when she's working out and what workouts she's doing. And I was like, have you noticed that like you haven't been doing your, you know, I mean, like you're like, yeah, I missed this session, you missed that session. Like, you know, I think there's a correlation between obviously like you're not feeling great. And that's probably what you know, like if you're just stressed out, that's probably what's meaning, you know, that's what's leading you to missing your workouts. But I would also say that like if you also are not relieving stress by doing something physical, you're cooped up in your house, because she lives in New Jersey where it is frozen right now. And I was like, if you're cooped up in your house and you're not being very physically active, like we are meant to move as like biologic creatures. And so I was like, you think that this is just making like a feedback loop? And so you feel bad and then you don't work out and you don't work out and it makes you feel bad. And she was like, no, I don't think so, because I just don't enjoy working out in general. And I was like, that's fine. Like you can, you know, a lot of people don't like lifting weights or a lot of people don't like doing cardio. But I would argue that like anybody who does I don't think anybody does it and then afterwards regrets it. You know, like you can have like oh, I hate cardio, but then you go do it and you're like, I feel better. You know, you walk out of the gym, it's like, I hated that, but I do feel good. That's our brain, you know, like biologically, we are wired to be movers, you know. So I'm trying to help my client, and you know, this is a work in progress, but I'm trying to help her draw that conclusion. And it doesn't always work, you know. Um, it's not always the easiest thing. But that's part of like the coaching process, right? So here's the thing. You're gonna have clients fall off the wagon. You're gonna have clients goof up. You're gonna have clients miss sessions. You're gonna have clients tell you that they hate working out, you know. And even if that happens, you, in order to be a really good coach, have to maintain one thing. And I think that this is really important for every goal out there. If you've got a goal that you're working on, and you start having like those really negative like thoughts or negative self-talk where you're just like, oh, I'm not good at this, oh, I'm never gonna get there, right? Here's my problem with that. It has a very unpositive outlook on something. And we don't want to be like nothing but positive. But one thing that we'd have to be an effective coach is what's called an unconditional positive regard. And this is my favorite thing of the day. You know, again, if you forget if you only grab onto one thing that I say today, remember the guided self-help thing. But if you remember two things, this is my favorite thing. The unconditional positive regard is the positive expectation of the coach that the client has the capacity to grow and that they have the ability to find the answers that they need. So what it means is that, like, you as the coach have to believe that your client will meet their goal. If your client is trying to get better about not eating fast food and they go to McDonald's every day for a week, 7 days in a row, you have to have this belief that they're not going to do it on day 8. That's the unconditional positive regard. Now, here's the thing. This is where I've had conversations with my clients where I'm like, I think a lot of times the unconditional positive regard is misinterpreted as just being positive. That's not what it is. Sometimes you have to have a very hard conversation with your client, but you are willing to have that conversation because you have the belief that it's going to be the thing that changes their habits. It's going to be the thing that, puts them in a good place, right? Once you lose the belief that, like, the conversations you're having, then the power of your ability to, like, coach is lost as well. I'll give you an example, and you guys are welcome to judge me as hard as you want. But I have this person that I regularly interact with in my life, that I tried very hard to work with for a long time. They're just a friend that I play frisbee with. And, this person was continually showing up late every week and making it everybody else's problem. This person would always kind of like complain and like, talk about like how hard everything was. All it's just like, oh, it's just really hard for me to get up. And it's like, this person wasn't really doing anything to get better at it. But it was making everybody else, like, it was difficult. Like, this person would show up late, and so it would screw up the teams and, do a lot of things. Literally a couple weeks ago, or not even a couple weeks ago, I think it was like a week and a half ago. They showed up, I mean, honestly, probably an hour late. We were in the middle of a game. And, in this game, you wear like lights or darks. And the light side was just dominating. And this person's also not like the best player, which is fine. Like, I don't judge for that at all. But like, we were like, hey, come over to our team. And that way it would kind of anchor us down a little bit and kind of even things out. The other team was really struggling. And so there was like a little bit of a miscommunication for just a second. And they ended up going over to the dark side and putting on like a dark t-shirt. And I was like, oh God, what are you doing? And they were like, well, I showed up late and I really want to play. So I'm just going to do whatever's fastest. And like, to me, that sentence translated to, I made a mistake, so I'm going to make this everyone else's problem. And I had a lot of patience for this person for a long time. And now I don't. I have no patience for this person at all. And so like every now and then they'll come up and they're like, hey, you're a coach, right? You're a fitness person. I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not taking on any clients right now. They've approached me a few times for workouts and nutrition advice and things like that. And I'm never going to give it to them because like, it's only going to lead to frustrations for them and for me. And I know that I'm going to be a bad coach if I try to coach this person. Now, I've absolutely given their number to students of mine, graduates of mine, like other trainers that I know. I've done that multiple times. Not once have they ever called any of those people, by the way. That's the only like piece of advice, but I'm not willing to do it on my end because I know I would be a bad coach if I worked with this person. I do not have an unconditional positive regard. I don't believe that they have the tools necessary to make a change. And that is a very harsh assessment. I think that's one of the harshest things you can say about someone. And I don't necessarily love that I feel that way. But that is legitimately how I feel. And I know that I would do a bad job. So I have to, so I'm not going to like work with this person. that's what you have to be a good coach. You have to have the belief that your client's going to screw up, because here's that they're going to succeed when they screw up. Wow. You have to have the belief that they're going to succeed. And I have that with every one of my clients. And the minute you lose it, you're showing up for your sessions and then you're on your phone. You're showing up and you're like, 3 more sets. Yeah. That's a crappy trainer, and you don't want to go down that road, because I've worked with those guys for years and years. I've seen so many bad trainers in gyms, and it drives me insane. No, none of you guys want to be that trainer, and I don't think anybody will. I definitely don't think anybody in this call, people who are dedicated enough to actually be on a freaking Zoom call regularly, which is not the most fun thing in the world, by the way. I get it. But you guys are all motivated. I can already tell, I see it when you guys show up in class and give me the effort, that's the positive. You're like, because I'm sure there are days where you're coming into Sochi, you're like, oh, the in-person meetup has to be today. I'm so busy. And you still do it. Yeah, that's who we're looking for. We want to develop that in our clients. We want to develop that resistance. So I could talk about the unconditional positive regard for 10 hours. It's like one of my favorite concepts. Again, it's not the belief that you're not just being positive. You're not being unconditionally positive and going, it's okay, it's okay. That's not what this means. Sometimes it means having a hard conversation with your client, where you're like, hey, like, this is not okay. You hired me to meet your goals, and you're not helping me out. You're not helping yourself out. That's a hard conversation sometimes, but we have those hard conversations because we know that it's the right thing to do to help them get there. Sometimes you got to have those conversations with yourself, that's the unconditional positive regard. We have a hard conversation because we believe that it's going to help them overall. So once that belief is lost, your power to coach is lost as well. All right. So let's talk about, actually, do anybody have any comments on that? It was a big, long, I'm on a soapbox here. Anybody want to chime in with that?
No, I mean, I could agree with you. I think it's one of those things where I feel like as a trainer, you have to understand what type of trainer you want to be and what type of trainer you are. And it's like one of those things where, like you said, like that client, that story you told us, like, yourself better than anyone. And you know that if you work with this person, it's just not going to work. Regardless of what you do, you already have that mindset. It's not going to work. And like, I always tell this to people, like, I'm going to tie it to what I love, boxing, right? Like me, I said I would. It's like, I could do it, but I already said I wouldn't want to, so it's already going to be like in play. So you already made that notion that I can't work well with this person. So it's just probably not going to work in the long run.
Yeah. And I wish them success. I hope they get what they need.
Yeah.
I just know that I'm the wrong person for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's one of the main takeaways you're trying to like convey to us, is that you need to understand how you work with other people. And like, like you said, will they actually do it? Who knows? And if you're not the trainer for them, the less likely they are to take you serious, even if they do pay for your services. Crazy.
Right. Yeah. I'd much rather have a client who shows up, for every session consistently, rather than a client who, gives me a tip, pays me a little bit more, but just misses a session every now and then. No way. Give me client one, All right. So let's go through how the coaching process works. Let's start talk about like a general coaching process in general, so we understand what we mean. So here's kind of the list of things we're going to go over. So first thing we need to do is we need to establish an effective coaching agreement. This is your contract. Okay. A lot of times this is like what you sign your clients up for on day one. You walked into the gym, you gave them their fitness assessment. They got super stoked. They're like, yeah, I want to sign up. They sign up for, let's say, an 8-session package, right? That's the first part of your contract. So An effective coaching agreement, let's say that's what they're hiring you for specifically, is an agreement that has a very clear boundary of time. So again, we love deadlines. Deadlines are an effective tool, so it has a very clear start and completion date. So it's like, hey, there are going to be 8 sessions, or 12 sessions, and then we can reevaluate. I think that in order for you to meet your goal, it's going to take about 6 months. If we are doing 8 sessions a month, every month we're going to renew. But it should take, so now we've got a very clear sort of deadline to work with it, right? We want to get a very clear idea of like what the engagement actually is. So like what's covered in the coaching process, how you are engaging with your client, and what the financial commitment is. Like, don't forget, guys, like you do got to charge for your services. You don't get to help anybody if if you don't sell them training sessions. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think we get a little squeamish about having to do like sales because sales people are often sort of considered to be kind of a sleazy kind of a sleazy industry sometimes, but again, you don't get to work with anybody if they don't have sessions. They can't have sessions if you don't sell them to them. So you do need to make sure that you are clearly laying out any of the financial arrangements. Also, make sure that you clearly state what your missed appointment policies are. If they miss a session, what does that mean? I'm pretty lenient. I have like a 3-strike policy. If I have a client who like misses a session, I'm usually pretty good about being like, it's all right, we'll figure it out. And I'll let them off the hook for a couple, like maybe 2 or 3 times. But after that, like, they miss their session. It's like, they're like, oh, my car wouldn't start, or, oh, I'm really swamped at work right now, or, those kind of things. It's like, I don't know, like you seem to have a lot of car problems, like, and don't get me wrong, like it could be true, but like, if that's true, maybe a different trainer who is also a mechanic or something is a better, choice for you. I had a client that I had to fire years ago because again, I lost the unconditional positive regard. They wouldn't show up for her. She would miss her session every time, every appointment. She was 7 a.m. I remember, which is like a hugely popular slot. And I was like, look, like I either got to, I like, and by the way, the reason she missed her sessions, I'm not judging this person. The reason she missed her sessions is because she was a social worker. And so she would get a call at like 2 a.m. and go like pick up a child in need. She's an amazing person. But like I had one of the busiest schedules at that gym and I couldn't move my schedule around. I just didn't have the slots available. And I was like, look, I want you to meet your goals. I don't think I'm the right coach for you, because I just don't have the space available to be flexible enough. You need a more flexible coach. So talk about what your missed appointment policies are, because sometimes you got to charge people, and then talk about what the coach's responsibility is, what the client's responsibility is. Get a really clear idea of like what your role is in things and what their role is in things. Our role is to create a structure. Their role is to do it, right? And if they're not, then they're not holding up their end of the bargain. I have definitely had hard conversations with clients over the years where it's like we've come up with like a really effective plan and they're like, I don't know why I'm not reaching my goal. And then we look through their workout journal, we look through their food journal, and it's like, well, I mean, look, your food journal has like a 4-day gap. What happened in those 4 days? It's like, oh, I know, I left it in my car and forgot about it. It's like, this was a tool that was helping, it can't help you if it's in your car. Same thing with the workout journals, we got to get a really clear idea of like what their job is. Like, look, I can help you, but you got to stick to the program. What can we do? Like, what's the most effective thing? I had a client who used to be a Olympic athlete. Actually, he was an Olympic speed skater. And then he tore out his, oh man, this guy like completely like practically detached his spine. He had like really bad herniations in like his entire lumbar spine and like parts of his cervical spine. It was wild. but he would forget his freaking workout journal all the time because he would take it home, and I was like, that's it. And I gave him a second workout journal, and I was like, this one stays in your car. And that way he would never be able to forget it. um, and he faked me out one time. It was really funny. He actually made me laugh really hard. He was like, oh, I forgot it. I was like, how did you forget it? Go get it. It's in your car. And he's like, I took the other car today. And I was like, oh my God. He was like, no, I'm just kidding. I don't have two cars. It was very funny. So anyway, establish like what their job is and what your job is. You're giving them the tools to succeed. They need to do it. Now, obviously, there are other parts of like being an effective coach. You do need to be able to establish trust and lots of rapport with your client. Remember, rapport is the level of trust that one person has in another. We talk about rapport a lot when we're talking about sales. If you are trying to sell someone something, you need to get that person to trust you. So that they don't think that you are just trying to sell them the biggest package possible to make the biggest commission, which, hopefully that's not how you're approaching things. But you need to develop rapport, get to know your client, right? Make sure they are aware that everything is that they talk about is confidential, and make sure that you understand that like they are an effective person who has the ability to make these changes. If you believe in them, that's a great way to establish trust. Also, make sure that you are displaying empathy and emotional support for your clients. One of the best ways to do this, guys, is to develop presence. Presence is an authentic inner focus that you are showing to your clients through outward signs of attention. I know that I'm not always the best at this. This is just something that I kind of know about myself. Sometimes I need to show people that I'm listening to them, because I tend to be kind of I tend to be kind of unfocused sometimes, and distractible. I get distracted really easily. And so I know that about myself. So when I'm trying to make sure that like someone feels heard, I always say in my head, I'm like, make eye contact, and I nod my head and I listen, and I try to then ask a question or a comment that is related to whatever it is that they just said. David, actually, I think you're very good at this. David, you're very good at sort of rewording some of the things that I say sometimes in your own language. And you have a very outward show of presence, where it's like, so what you're saying is, and you kind of reword it. I do that a lot with my clients, with my friends, my family, and it helps me stay focused, because I know that sometimes and I'm not always perfect at this. I'm sure if my mom were in this room right now, she'd be like, you are not great at the yeah. It's not always perfect, but I try to make people feel like they're being heard. And that's a really good way to help establish trust in somebody else, and rapport. It's good for you and it's good for them. So here's some really good examples of that, right? There's some empathetic statements. I don't know if you guys notice this about me, but I say this all the time. I hear what you are saying. I don't say it that way, but I go, I hear you. And I'm trying to make sure that this person knows that I am hearing them. My mom, God, she would say this all the time. She was like, hey, what did I just say? And I was like, you said this? And I'd repeat back to her. And I was like, see, I was listening. And she was like, you were listening, you weren't hearing. And I'd be like, and she was right. I was like, I heard the words she said, but I didn't absorb them. So empathetic statements can kind of help with that. Like, I hear you, or like saying something that's like really encouraging is another way to develop empathy, or show that you are empathizing, right? Like say this to somebody is like, you are capable of making this change. Like, my favorite way to say that is like, you got this. That's a really good way to kind of show that you believe in someone, and it helps develop rapport. It strengthens the connection between you and your client. Providing helpful examples is obviously a big one. I think that I overdo this a little bit. Sometimes it feels like, and I get this from my parents, sometimes it feels like I've got a story for every situation. My parents will tell 1,000 stories in a row at 100 miles per hour. Uh, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I try to manage that myself. And sometimes I do it a lot too. Um, this honestly, what I'm saying right now is kind of an example. But like providing helpful examples to your clients, inspiring stories, guys, people love them. People love them. I love to talk. And the more clients you get to work with, what's great about that is the more really cool examples and cool stories you've got. You're gonna hear me tell some really fun stories in this class about times that my clients have done some really wacky things that have been like the key moment that like got them to quit smoking, or tried a really weird thing that got them into like exercising, and all of a sudden now they're really into it. I've had clients who have lost hundreds of pounds, go on to actually work in the fitness industry. I've had clients, I had a client who had a heart attack who became a life coach. That stuff is awesome. So those are really motivating stories for clients who are like trying to take control of their life. You guys are going to get to develop those stories over your careers, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It's so fun. Active listening. This is very similar to the presence thing we just talked about. Active listening is fully being focused on your client. You can show that you are active listening through outward signs of active listening. Again, focusing completely on them, making eye contact, asking questions related to what it is they're talking about, rather than going, yeah, uh-huh, yeah, right? Like that's kind of a good way to tell that someone's not listening. A really good way to tell if someone is listening is to hear what you said in their words. Like I said, David, I think you are very good at this. I don't know if you are mind hacking me or what, but there are times where it's like, so what you're saying is, you'll say it. And I'm like, yeah, it's put a little bit differently than the way I put it, but yeah, that's very clearly the same thing I just said. It's a great way to show somebody that you're actively listening. You do it with your clients, they'll love it. Ask them questions. It's a really good sign. So listen attentively, focus completely on them. Try to filter out your own internal chatter. I don't know if you guys have a million voices in your head like I do, but I got to tell those guys to shut up when I'm trying to listen to someone. Don't be afraid to hold the silences. This actually is okay. You can sit there quietly while your client is talking, and if they take like a big long pause, don't feel like you have to fill every second with like talking. It's okay to be quiet and sit in silence. We sit in silence sometimes when I'm like, you guys have any questions? And I just kind of sit there, check for a moment. I know that a lot of that is Zoom lag, and people are like, and they're trying to get to their phone for a second. But don't be afraid to like sit in those silences sometimes silence is where you learn the most about your client, because it sometimes tells you why they're being silent. Now, an effective coach, another really important thing that you got to do, challenge their freaking thinking. Sometimes people get so negative. So don't be afraid to like communicate like a positive attitude and challenge those negative thoughts. One of the coolest tools that we're going to talk more about later is what's called reframing. This is going to be really big when we get to CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. Reframing is asking questions to help your client see things in a really fair light. One of my roommates and also my girlfriend are really terrific at this. Where sometimes it's like you'll have an opinion, you'll say something, you're like, God, I just feel like da, 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 da. And they'll go, well, to be fair, and then like you'll kind of you'll lay it out a little bit differently, and then you'll see it and you go, yeah, that is fair. Like I guess I was making an assumption. I guess it leads to a much more accurate view of the situation. And if you can't get somebody to do that, then ask them a question related to that. It's like, so do you see how this person maybe feels this way, or like this is happening, right? And it's like, yeah, I guess so. And that sometimes is like the way that we challenge someone without like making them feel like they're wrong or like they're dumb. We're not trying to make anybody feel that way. We're just trying to get them to see things from an accurate, standpoint. It's like, I work out all the time. And it's like, yes. So let me ask you a question. When you work out all the time, is it like, are you leaving the gym feeling energized, or are you feeling the gym feeling drained? And they're like, I don't know, I guess a little, I feel the same as I went in. And it's like, well, I mean, if you work out really hard, you actually kind of get some positive endorphins afterwards, So like, are you going to the gym and like getting on a treadmill and reading a magazine the whole time? Or are you getting in the gym and like putting in the effort? And then they start thinking about it and they're like, yeah, I tend to kind of screw around on my phone and, I'm playing Tetris on my phone while I'm on the treadmill. And it's like, maybe that's not really a workout then, maybe that's a walk, which, I'm pro walking. Activity is activity, but still, like, that's not going to make the big changes that we're looking for. So that's a little bit of reframing. Sometimes that's a really good way to help somebody sort of change their perspective. So we got some examples here. You'll see these in chapter 2. When someone says like, I'll never be able to run a marathon, right? And they're like, they say it's a really negative, absolute, black and white, I'll never be able to do this. I'm terrible at this. You hear people say stuff like that all the time. And so it says like, well, do you think that it's true that maybe you could go train for like maybe a 5K or a 10K, see how it goes? That's like a reframed, much more positive statement, right? It's like a marathon's a big journey. Why don't we start with something small that you can achieve, and then we'll build ourselves up from there, right? Or when someone says like, I'm terrible, I hate exercise, right? Maybe it's like, that's not true, right? Like, maybe it's like true that there's times where you've been really active, but currently it's like you're struggling. That's a reframed, much more positive sentence. We are always trying to help our clients develop more positive sentences. You also want to help your client establish a very clear focus. This is where goals come in, helping set goals that are actually going to carry them through to the end. Particularly performance and learning goals are some of the best type. I like outcome goals. I do. Like, outcome goals are like a specific outcome, like I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to run a marathon, right? Those are great, and I'm a fan. But one of the best things to do is to have like a blend of different types of goals, and performance and learning goals are really good ways to do this, right? So performance goals are just learning how to improve your performance in a specific area. So like, for instance, somebody who's just trying, is like, maybe they aren't necessarily running a marathon yet, but they're going for a jog 3 days a week. That's like great, like that's better. Or maybe they're while they're jogging, they're staying like, on their toes, they're keeping their chest high and they're focusing forward. That's like getting better at performance, right? And then learning goals are really good too. Learning goals are like more focused on like the overall like mastery of something. So they're looking at like a very specific skill and mastering that one particular part of it, So like, if somebody wanted to be a better basketball player, right, a learning goal that's related to that is like, I want to work on specifically like top of the key shots. They're not working on their layups, although that's, good. They're not working on dunking. They're not working on, 3-pointers from the corner for anything like that. They're not working on their defense. They're not working on their dribbling skills. They're just focused on like one little thing currently, like a learning goal that sort of helps them become like a master of that. We'll say, okay, well, I mastered that. Let's move on to the next thing, and eventually you get better and better and better. My girlfriend loves disc golf. I've told you guys this. She loves disc golf, and I am learning to love it. I'm getting there. The more often I play, like the more I'm kind of getting into it, because I'm noticing that it's helping with my really long backhand throws. And over the years, I've gotten better and my flick is better than my backhand. Which is weird because the backhand is sort of where you start. But I've sort of lost that skill over the years. And now that I do a little bit more disc golf, I'm throwing way further than I was before, which is great. And I'm really like working on this like one particular skill and learning to get better at it. So it's a learning goal. It's a mastery. You master one thing and then you move on to the next. One of the big things you also need to do is you need to provide options to your clients. Don't just give your clients all the same cookie cutter approach to everything. Check in with them. It's like, hey, does this fit for you? How do you feel about this? Right? Those are really good ways to make sure that you have the right strategy in place for your client. Also, you want to ask the appropriate questions. Get to your clients like true motivations. This is a classic thing, right? Again, I used this example earlier where someone's like, I want to get in shape. I don't really know what that means to you, because in shape to me means, being able to play a frisbee, being able to play ultimate for a couple games. But in shape to somebody else might be like, I want to be able to see my six pack, or I want to be able to squat, my body weight. Okay, great. Like that's what we mean. We want to ask certain questions that actually get to the heart of our client, right? What do you think's stopping you, right? If this is your goal, why haven't you already achieved this before we met? Get to the heart of their values, get to the heart of their desires, figure out what's actually important to them. So let's go ahead and break the coaching process down. We're going to break this down into 4 steps. I personally like the 3-step method, but we're going to get a little bit more specific about it today. So coaching basics, right? First thing you need to do, establish a contract, right? Sit down with your client, get them on a contract. Not only do I don't just necessarily mean like a contract like this is how many sessions, this is what it costs, here's what we're going to renew. It's not necessarily what I mean. I mean, like, what is your job? What is my job? How are we going to get there, right? That's the contract. What is it that you are specifically hiring me for? I want to know like what you're passionate about. Then we can sort of like meet to discuss like any issues and what their goals are, and then like summarize that up. So first thing, get the contract out of the way. Second thing, discuss like what any issues that might be holding them back are. Summarize those issues with the client, and then you're going to do it, right? We're going to work towards sort of overcoming those issues, right? So that's sort of a 4-step thing. This is not in your book, but this is very similar to the corrective exercise process, right? When we look at this, first we need to identify the problem, right? So let's talk about what their issues are. Let's talk about like what their goals are, what it is they want to work out. Next, let's summarize. They're summarizing the issues. Let's solve the problem. Now, when I say solve the problem, I don't mean the problem's gone. I mean, I've come up with the solution. I've come up with a path to get us there, right? That's solving the problem, right? Again, we said earlier, we had a client whose knees cave in. I know that means tight adductors and weak glute muscles. So the solution is to stretch the adductors and to strengthen the glutes. I just solved the problem. Now I got to do it. And that's step 3. We got to implement the solution, right? So we're going to encourage the client and work with them over the course of like however many sessions it's going to take, right? So it's basically the same as the 3-step method, except that it's got the contract in the beginning. So your flow of a coaching session might look something like this. Check in to see how they're doing, discuss any of the homework that you assigned to them from the previous session and how they feel about that, what progress they've made and stuff. Discuss like any new situations that have come up, and measure the progress towards their goal, right? Be like, hey, like we're moving away from your goal, or hey, we're moving towards it. Like, this is great. How can we pick up speed? Modify your goals if you need to. Ask some questions that are related to those things, set the expectations for the next goal. So you're going to give out new homework to your client, and then book the next session, So any questions on that before we go through? We got 2 little things left here. How you guys all doing? How y'all feeling?
I'm feeling good. I wanted to ask you, but I'll wait till the after class because it doesn't have to do anything with this.
Okay, yeah, that's what I love. Those are the best questions. Okay. So last little things we got to look at are 2 little tools that NASM has done that sort of take us through the coaching process. Now, this is not like a flow chart. You don't have to go from step to step to step to step, but these are all kind of things you kind of want to think about when you're working with your clients. So one of those things is what's called the Oscar model of change, and it gives you a clear sort of idea of like all the things you need to do as a coach, right? So it focuses on the outcome, which is like the destination of the goal. Basically, if you can ask your client like, hey, what's your desired long-term outcome? What do you want to achieve through like me coaching you working out, right? There's the situation. You want a very clear, like, what's the situation they're currently in? You want to ask your client like, hey, well, if you want to achieve this, where are you right now? Right? That way we can get a kind of a clear idea of what their starting point is. This is where assessments come in. You know, it's like, they're like, I want to be 180 pounds. Okay, let's go find out what you weigh right now. Right? So there's our outcome, there's our situation. The next one is the choices and consequences. This is huge. These are the options. So you can ask your client, what choices have you made, or what choices do you want to make, or what choices do you need to make? They're going to have the best consequences. Now, consequences gets a bad rap. That word is negatively associated with, like, you know, oftentimes consequences we think bad, you know, we think like it's the things that are, it's the consequences of my action. Here's the thing. The consequences of your working out every day are that you get in really good shape. You know, like, consequences can be good, you know? So we're going to ask our client, like, what are the choices? What are the consequences of those choices, right? If they've got the choice to roll back over into bed and go back to sleep and miss our training session, what's the consequence? Or maybe they get out of bed, strap on their shoes, they get in the car, they show up on time. What are the consequences of that? Consequences of one thing are, you know, maybe not meeting our goals. The consequences of the other one are becoming a fitness expert, you know? Actions is the detailed plan. This is you kind of summarizing things up. I like to put this on paper when I'm working with my clients. So it's when you're going to do it and with whom. So like this is your detailed action plan, right? What am I going to do? What's my choice? You know, what's my plan of action? Where am I headed after this? And then lastly, guys, one thing that you always want to do with your clients is review. Make sure you're on track and talk about like how you are going to review. So like sometimes when it comes to that review bit, it comes down to like checking in with them weekly. Maybe it's through a text message, maybe it's through a phone call, an email, whatever. You just need to make sure you're communicating with your client regularly. So there are a couple different like learning styles out there that we do need to just take a look at really quick, because every client's going to be a little bit different. You know, these are called Kolb's learning styles. Guys, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on this. But like sometimes, like if you've ever noticed that like you learn things a little bit differently than someone else, these are sort of like maybe where that's coming from. So certain people are more like diverging. These are people who learn by like feeling and maybe watching others. So like if you are coaching somebody who is like kind of a diverging personality, chances are that brainstorming with them and then getting them to trust you by developing a lot of rapport is going to be the best like tool in your toolbox. So bringing them into the conversation and being like, what do you think is going to be the best way to do this? Right? That's a really good way to like get a diverging personality to work. Sometimes people just want to be told what to do. My roommate, I train him. He's like, he doesn't want to know how the bread is made. Right? He has no interest. I was like, so we're going to do this rep range this week. And he's like, I don't care. Just make me do it. Not so much a diverging style of learning, right? Other people are assimilating, right? They learn by watching. They learn by like thinking about things. These are the people who are like really up in their head sometimes, right? So they benefit from like a really deep understanding of what needs to happen. This is where like you're gonna like be like, all right, so in order to do this, we have to do this. Assimilating people love that, right? So those are the examples you want to give. It's like we're squatting right now because squatting targets your glutes. Glutes are going to really help with that knee pushing out situation. We've got converging, which is a little bit different than diverging. Converging clients are people who learn by like doing and thinking. This is a person who like dives in head first, right? They love like a good technical explanation. They love like a good demonstration. And then they're just like ready to hop in the water, you know? They're all about it, right? And then we've got accommodating people. These are people who learn by like doing and feeling. This is somebody who benefits from like specific actions, and they need to have like a really strong amount of rapport with the trainer. You know, they're a feeling person, right? We want to appeal to their emotions by really developing like a lot of trust with them. Right. So again, the more rapport you've got with this person, the better. And then they love to just like try things out. You know, it's that trust fall person who they're like, oh, this is dangerous, but I trust you. Like they're gonna do, they're just gonna do it, right? They're gonna jump head first in, but only if they trust the person. So those are kind of the four big things you'll see. there are things to be aware of. These are things to pay attention to, because it gives you the right idea of like how to work with your client. Now, do you need to have this memorized? Definitely not. This is something that like you kind of naturally pick up on. The same thing is true of like multiple intelligences, right? I'm sure you guys are probably a little bit different from me. I'm sure that you're different from each other. I'm a little bit different from everybody that I meet. We all have like different intelligences, right? Some people are big verbal communicators. I think that like they generally like really like love metaphor and humor. That's me. I'm definitely like a linguistic intelligence person. When I was in school, if I had a teacher who was like speaking in a monotone the entire time, I could not absorb information. It would just bounce right off. But if I had a client who was like a little funny and had like ups and downs in the way that they talk, I absorbed info like that. I'd remember it very, very easily. Some people are more logical, mathematical. I have a roommate who is the most logical, mathematical person I know. They love like a big analysis of problems. Some people are more spatial, they just like diagrams. They love like a good chart. That's why I try to make some charts for you guys whenever I can. I know they're not perfect. I'm not exactly that great at drawing, but like Microsoft Paint does some work. Those are for my spatial intelligence people. We got body kinesthetic. I think that all of the people in the PFT program are at least a little body kinesthetic. It's easier to learn things when you get to the gym and actually do them. Some people are musical. I am definitely not, but some people are. They use like a tempo. Other people, like, it's interpersonal. They relate to others and how they do it. And some people are intrapersonal because some people have a really good understanding of themselves. So again, finding your client's personality type, learning a little bit about them, their learning style, their intelligences. These are going to be really powerful tools in your tool belt to help establish trust, but also to know how to work with your clients. Now, that being said, there's no standard way to do this. I don't have like a flow chart for you guys. I don't have like all the right answers for all the various types of clients that you're going to see. But we do know that like some of the most powerful tools we've got are using questionnaires. We can ask our clients like a lot of questions and get a very clear idea of sort of what's going on with them. Sometimes it will bring up their issues. Maybe they're ambivalent. Maybe they just don't actually care to their issue. They set a goal they don't actually care about. So you ask them why, and you find out that it's not really important to them. They just read a magazine that said they should do this. So we need to figure that out and be like, all right, well, what do you care about? Or maybe they have like inconsistent behavior change. Maybe some people are really resistant to change because they just can't stick to the program. They get distracted. Okay, let's figure out how to help them develop focus. Some people are just not so good at self-reflection. Some people do not develop awareness very easily, and so helping them be like, hey, do you see how this is like a habit of yours? And they're like, no, I'm sure I don't do it that often. It's like, well, you've done it every time for the last 5 sessions. And they're like, really? Help them self-reflect, learn how to develop that awareness. And then sometimes people will just have competing commitments. This is like a really tough one to work out sometimes. People are like, I want to lose weight, but I also love McDonald's. Not saying you can't have it, but let's be a little bit structured about how we do those things. That's those competing. This is probably the most common one, I would say, which is really tough to work with. So that was a lot. Don't feel like you have to have any of that memorized today, guys. But you are going to see all these things kind of come back up. This is what we are going to be going over the next 8 classes, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of different tools to use. Certain tools work really well. Like I visualize really strongly, but I don't respond very well to visualization. Like when I've had people try to be like, just see yourself doing this, it just, I don't know. It's not a type of tool that works very well for me. Part of the reason why I, didn't continue pursuing acting. Not the strongest visualizer in the world. But it can be really, I've definitely used it with my clients before. It can be a really effective tool depending on the person. So we are going to give you guys a whole bunch of tools to put in your coaching tool bag over the next 8 days. Some of them are going to work for you. Some of them are going to work for your clients. You don't have to use all of them, but you can use any of them. That's what's going to be very helpful. And that's about it, fellas. Julio, Cyrus, David, Danny, and Chris, how are you guys feeling?
Doing good, sir. Right.
I'm feeling good.
Love it. Love that.
Yep.
It's kind of fun, right? Like it's a very different pace than just talking about anatomy. I'm going to be stepping up on a lot of soapboxes in this class.
Oh yeah, I don't mind. I think it's interesting to hear your perspective since you have a really long time in the industry and you have a lot more time dealing with different types of people. So I find that really interesting.
So that's what's going to be fun is you're going to, you guys are each going to kind of like, there's certain tools that they're not my favorite, but I've used them. They work with the client, you just got to do whatever works. All right, let me kill the recording here real quick. If you guys got to bounce out of here, you can. And then